Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their all access pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. There's a wonderful crew of people over on Patreon giving money every month to make sure that this show and this podcast happen and cut my overhead costs so that I can keep doing it. I can't express my thanks enough for their support and their belief in what we're doing over here. And if you'd like to join them and help support this podcast, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40watt podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support this show. And actually, now that we are starting to get sponsors for the episode, my $3 supporters will get the episodes ad-free. If you want to support at a $5 level, you'll get ad-free episodes and you will get additional content every week. I thank all of you that have given money to help keep this going, and I thank all of you that are going to become supporters and help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you so much. 40 Waters, welcome to another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. So happy to have you joining me today. Thank you so much for all the listens, downloads, all the support that's come into the podcast, especially in the few weeks that we've been off here. Had a lot of great folks reaching out to me, just seeing how things were going. And I really, really appreciate all the folks chiming in, supporting the show, and joining the Patreon. Y'all heard about the Patreon and the ad before the show. Unless you're a Patreon member, in which you don't get the ads. So you get to hear it without me asking you for more money. Thank you for those of you that do support the show. I'm going to call y'all out at the end of the show to thank you again for all the support you give me. I like to name the names that keep this train on the tracks. It really helps me out, and I really, really appreciate it. So having said all that, let's get into this episode. I'm super excited. I'm having a hard time actually classifying, David, what you do, but welcome to the show. I'm going to David Ross of David Ross Musical Instruments. So David, you make pedals. I know you've built an amp. I know you do like guitar repair. Like you sort of like got your hands in a whole bunch of fires and whatnot.
Sure.
Lots of work in the gear world, lots of conversations over in the Discord server. Listener, if you're into Discord, there is a Discord server for this podcast. There's a lot of cool folks that basically we spend the whole time convincing each other to buy guitars and amps. It's a great time. But David, let's step back. Let's do the 30,000 foot view. Who are you? How did you get into guitar? How'd you get into doing guitar repair, building pedals and amps and that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm David Ross. I'm from Binghamton, New York. I suppose it really all starts with my father, who is a multi-instrumentalist. He's a guitar player, and he's also a music teacher and live performer. He plays avant-garde jazz in a live format, and
Oh, wow.
also a blues musician. And so I've always been into music, and it's kind of a reflection, of my father, who kind of got me into it from a very young age. I would say that when I was young, like I played a bunch of different instruments, but never really connected with one specifically, up until probably around my 13th birthday or so, when my parents they got me a Behringer Strat, which was like $99 with a little practice amp. And it was really when I learned that I could play music that I was into at the time that I really took off with it. The first song that I kind of learned to play on my own was For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. And I just was able to play that, like just kind of looking at tabs, and was able to figure it out. And that really kind of clicked for me. Then from there, it was basically just learning guitar up until I was probably 17 or 18 when, you know, as you do when you get playing guitar, you kind of, you know, change the strings, do little modifications here and there. And so one day, I guess I kind of got taking apart the guitar for whatever reason. And I realized, like, it all kind of makes sense the way that it's set up. And so I just found that very fascinating, like the more mechanical aspect of the guitar. And so from there, I really kind of dove deep into guitar repair and guitar building. And I pretty much wanted to build guitars pretty much exclusively. But I knew that repair would be kind of the foundation of that type of thing. And so probably from around 2007 or so until now, I've been really like deep in guitar repair. And this kind of culminated last year around this time when I started my business and
Hmm.
doing guitar repair out of my house in Binghamton. And so yeah, it's been an interesting year. I've probably learned more in the past year or so than in any other year of my life, just running the business, doing guitar repair for customers. So that's pretty much where I'm at with it right now.
That's a pretty big jump going from, because I had a similar experience. I learned to play guitar, then you learn how to change your own strings. I feel like that's always the first. It should be the first step. Y'all, please go. If you're not changing your own strings, it's super easy. Please learn to do it. Save yourself that trouble. Don't take it to the music store. For all my friends who work in music stores, I asked them about that, and they said, yeah, they said the number of people that bring it back to the music store to get the strings changed blows their mind. I'm like, pair of wire cutters and you can do the whole job,
Yeah,
seriously. Or a $5 string winder. But yeah, and that's how I got started. Then started doing modifications. I wanted to change pickups, so I learned to solder. But that's still, even then, when you get into doing your own setups and adjusting truss rods, and that's a big leap to me to get from doing that kind of work into saying I want to build guitars, or I want to do. To me, the moment you start talking fretwork too, that's like the thing that
oh
is
yes,
scary to me, super scary to me.
it should
Although I
be.
think yeah, it's super scary. I do think I've got a beater guitar. I think I'm going to finally bite the bullet, and I'm going to order some fret wire and some tools and learn to refret a guitar. I'm going to learn to do it, and then I'm going to completely butcher it, and then I'm going to try to fix it, and then I'm going to have to do it again. And I already know that that's exactly how that's going to happen.
You got it.
um yeah, but so that's still a pretty big leap. So you're doing guitar repair now. How many you've built any guitars yet? I know we've talked about amps and pedals, and we're going to get to those here in a little bit.
I have.
um
Yeah, I built, I would say, probably 6 to 8 guitars
okay.
of varying quality. My first guitar was just, brutal, just
Oh yeah,
completely
as
terrible.
it is, as it
Yeah.
is.
And then kind of over the years, I've built really a handful because my feeling was I could keep building guitars and keep doing that, and they would kind of, I would get, incrementally better. But I felt like having the repair work as the foundation, I really kind of understand the guitar and understand like every repair would really benefit me in building guitars moving forward. So my last guitar that I built was probably, I think last year. I have two currently that I'm kind of working on, but I'm
Okay,
busy with other things. Um, the last one that I built, um, that it was close. There, I had a bunch of mistakes, just some, just not paying attention or just minor things. And but I really feel like I'm almost on the verge of a breakthrough with it. Um, my goal eventually is to sell guitars that I build, but I found that my skills as a guitar builder don't quite line up with where I'm at as a business person. And
gotcha.
so I still need to work it out. And figure out exactly how I want to do it. And, you know, when I bring something to market, just really make it as good as a Gibson, as good as a Fender, or, any other custom builder. That's really my goal for it.
Yeah, when you get out there, you want that thing that you're offering to be at the quality level that you believe it should be, because you don't want to. And I realize some people do this, and that's fine. But it's one thing to put something out and then be like, well, the next one's going to be better. The next one's going to be better. Well, that first one better be good. Like if you're going to come out, you need to come out swinging, and it's a hard thing to do to get to that level. And but see how you think about this, but I've noticed, like, because my Instagram feed, by the way, listener, if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's real easy to find me at 40 Watt Podcast, 40 Watt Podcast over on Instagram. I'll probably follow you back because that's who I am as a person. But there's so many amazing guitar builders now that they're not like documentary style documenting, but they document their techniques. Like there's every time I scroll through, there's somebody showing how they shape a net heel, or there's somebody showing the way they route the top, or how they file the frets, or how they round fret ends. I love, actually, it's almost ASMR levels how much I love watching people round fret ends, because that is such an incredible skill that's lost on some builders. I'm not naming names. So it's, and then you add to that, you got YouTube, you've got all the other resources. StuMac offers more than they ever have, and there's other companies popping up offering this time. It is the best time, I think, in the history to try to learn to build instruments in general. um I don't know if you've noticed that there's just so many resources out there for learning to do it. Whereas you used to have to track down a builder, someone of great quality, great skill, and then you had to just screw up guitars under their tutelage for years
Mm.
just to learn some of these skills that are being offered just video all the time.
Well, I mean, with the videos, they make it look so easy because, they've been at it for so long. But I can say
Yeah.
that in my process of repairing guitars and building guitars, I mean, I've absolutely butchered some guitars, but all of my own. I can honestly say, like, I've never butchered a customer's guitar because, I know better than to do that. And
Yeah.
part of the process is, just making mistakes. Like, you can watch all the videos you want, but, once it's you and the guitar, I mean, you can screw it up in a hurry. Like, I've often thought that a mistake that you make with a guitar in 5 seconds can cost you 5 hours of work. I mean, it's that brutal. But you're right when you say it's never been better as far as finding resources on techniques, how people put things together. And when I was kind of learning all of this, like back in 2007, it was still a really good time. Not as good as now because it's even expanded further. But I remember
Right.
going on the old Project Guitar forum and seeing builders like Ola Strandberg, like when he was just starting out, and just being amazed by like the CNC work and just the professionalism of his builds and the quality. Also with Ormsby guitars back then,
Oh
when he
yeah.
was really getting going, and stuff like that was really inspiring for me because I felt like I was on that type of path, and seeing their work was just phenomenal.
It's funny you talk about the CNC. That's something else that is pretty mind-boggling. We're not there where I'm going to call it affordable, but like a home CNC machine has become relatively affordable. You see various companies that offer, varying size and quality of CNC machines, but like for somebody, and I don't have prices, and I wouldn't even try to quote them if I could. But if somebody wanted to get into guitar building seriously and wanted to have their own CNC machine, it's actually attainable
It is, yeah.
without being independently wealthy now. And I think some of the stigma around CNC guitars has died out, because I think people have realized that even when you CNC a guitar, there's a lot of handwork that still has to go into it. All the CNC is doing is letting the what normally was basically a lumberjack job to get the rough shape of it out, and get that into your hands so that you can actually start to do the fine skill work of turning it into a musical instrument and not just a guitar shaped object.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, with CNC, I it's something that I actually was very interested in a while back, and I priced it out. Like probably the biggest consideration is actually the electrical, like getting
mm,
220, um, just getting everything together. I priced it out with like dust collection, with like the bits, with really everything you need. Like, I created an Excel sheet and like was really thorough with it. I think it was probably between 4 and 5 grand you could expect to pay for like a very quality machine, which is not a tremendous amount of money if this
that's
is what
super
you're into.
reasonable.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's super reasonable. Because if you're gonna looking at going the route of a CNC, you're probably pretty serious about what you're doing at that point.
yeah,
And a $4,000 to $5,000 investment seems a really reasonable investment into the amount of time that that's going to save you. Um, that's before you put in all the programming time, where that's a whole other podcast.
yeah,
But I think it's really getting super affordable to do those kinds of things. You see, you look at somebody like that's so respected, like Novo, and they've got like 3 or 4 CNC machines. They're seeing out CNC in the main portion of the guitars out. Um, the part that always gets the hardest for me, and like we were talking about at the top of the show, is when you get to a neck. The neck, I think, is where guitar makers really the body, and I want to talk about the style of guitars you're looking at building too, because I'm kind of interested in that. Um, I think the body is how you get people's attention at first. That's how you get the average player's attention.
mm,
You really get the player's attention though by the neck of the guitar. That's what sells the guitar to somebody, because
sure.
that's what you actually play. And that's where I think that's where the craftsmanship really comes into play, because I've played some beautiful guitars that had terrible necks, and vice versa, some really hideous guitars that just played beautifully. um so when you talk about style of guitars, what kind of stuff are you into? Like, are you really into vintage inspired? Are you really into really doing something different? I know you've already mentioned Strandberg, which is, I don't know when they'll start to be considered sort of a normal guitar style.
Yeah,
I don't
they're
know if ever.
definitely niche. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but as far as the style of guitar that I'm interested in, actually, probably I think it was my second Instagram post. Actually shows one of the guitars that I built, and it's basically a super strat, 24 frets, um, unusual design with the body. Um, you'd have to see it to really kind of make what you make of it, but
Right.
uh, at this point, after doing repairs for so long and kind of seeing what people play and just through my own personal playing, I think there needs to be kind of a transition between kind of more vintage and more modern. Like I wouldn't be looking to make something super modern, but also not just making tellies, for example. I think
Yeah.
I think that probably a nice middle ground between the two, um, where really anybody can pick it up and feel comfortable with it. That's kind of the style of guitar. I tend to lean more backwards than forwards, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like that's where like builders like Tom Anderson and John Sir, that's sort of like the world they live in, is vintage inspired instruments made for modern players.
Right.
You see their heritage, you see the legacy. No one's gonna pick up a Sir and not see the Fender influence,
Yeah.
but it's definitely its very own instrument. It's not just a, he's not remaking a '63 Strat over here. He's doing something very much his own and very different. And I love that idea. Um, I'm not good at playing super modern guitars. I wish I were.
Yeah, I
Um,
found that a lot of them are just, they get to be trendy or, that type of thing. And one thing that I think people have to remember is the Stratocaster, the Les Paul, Telly. I mean, they really got it right, like pretty much off the bat. Like, there's a reason why they've stuck around for as long as they have. I mean, they're so well designed, and to
yeah,
go too far away from that, I think, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Um,
And I think it gets harder to I think it gets a lot harder to reinvent that too, because those guitars simultaneously, emerged at the roots of rock and roll. Buddy Holly playing a Strat, that was like rock and roll. Um, then just on through the years, and we're getting to a time now where there's the conversation that there aren't really any guitar heroes anymore, at least not any new ones. I mean, John Mayer, for love him or hate him, may end up being the last quote unquote guitar hero, and the man plays a Strat. You know what
right.
I mean? So you've also got that uphill climb of, is there going to be an artist influential enough who doesn't play a vintage inspired instrument that might actually push a new guitar into that echelon, a new style of guitar into that echelon? I don't I don't see it happening. I feel like if it were going to happen, it would have happened by now. I mean,
It,
Strat, Telly, Les Paul, the newest guitar of those three is the Les Paul, and it came out in 1953.
right. Right.
You know,
Yeah, I think just because there's such a long history with those guitars, I think, a modern guitar hero coming by with something, new, I don't really see that happening either. But that isn't to say I don't think guitar is in a good place. I do. I think it's kind of, broadened out. Um,
yeah, oh yeah.
there used to be three channels on TV. Now there's, however many. So, um,
Now it's all the streaming services.
yeah, pretty much.
I
But
pay more for streaming services than I ever did for cable.
yeah, but yeah, I think guitar is in a good place with that type of thing. But I mean, it would really have to be somebody who, like, a Taylor Swift level of person to kind of bring a new guitar to the forefront. I I don't
Yeah,
really
and
see it
that's what I.
happening.
Yeah, no. See, that's the thing. I think guitar actually is more popular now than it's ever been. I
I think so
100%
too.
believe that.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing it's all these pockets. There's not any one person really capturing everyone's imagination playing guitar in a Taylor Swift level. Actually, that's a really good illustration in what she does with her fandom and the buzz that's generated around her. If Taylor Swift were not just a singer songwriter, and she's a talented musician in her own right, but if she were like a virtuosic guitar player and played a new style of guitar and had her fandom, yeah, there you might see something happen there. I
Right.
mean, there you go, Strandberg. Get Taylor Swift on board, and
That would be a nice pairing.
that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But so you're into guitar repair. You've been doing this for quite a while now. You're going on. You said '08 or so,
Oh
late
seven, oh
late
eight. Yeah.
aughts.
I'm
Yeah.
probably about 13 years in or so with guitar repair. And with guitar pedals, when did I start? I think about 2016 was when I built
Okay.
my first guitar pedal from a kit, which, again, like, the learning experience, the wiring was terrible, but got it to work. So, and,
Yeah.
progressed from there.
Wiring is such a overlooked skill. I just a couple of days ago, I swapped some pickups out in a guitar that I bought, and it's a semi hollow guitar, and it's a real pain to get in and out of that guitar. But
Oh, it's the Epiphone dot?
yeah. It's the
Yeah.
Dot Epiphone that I was pulling the Fralins out of, and I was putting some stock Epiphone pickups in so I could move the Fralins. And I realized, now this is, I don't know, this is the fourth or fifth time that I've changed pickups in a semi hollow guitar. And I discovered that I'm getting better at this.
Hmm.
It was a much faster, much smoother, cleaner process this time than in the past. And actually, I used a totally different method. I didn't use surgical tubing. I didn't use fishing line this time. I actually used some just spare electrical wire that I had around, and I stripped the ends and wrapped it around the post that way because it gave me something a little easier to hold on to and manipulate. And it went very, very clean, very, very smooth, and it got it all back together, and everything worked perfectly the first time. I think that's a first for a semi hollow guitar. um and it's that the solder joints were better, the just the time it took, and that's that skill, that's that learning how to do it it's a simple thing. Soldering's really simple. You heat up a low melting point metal and you put it on two metals, and it welds
bonds.
them
Yeah.
together. Yeah, it bonds it. It sounds like a simple thing. It is not as simple as it sounds, and just over time you get better and better and better at it. And that first pedal's going to be a wreck.
Yeah. But
You're lucky if it works.
yeah, and it usually doesn't work right away. You have to
Yeah,
troubleshoot and all that. But also another thing that nobody really talks about with soldering, like with guitar wiring, the quality of the iron and also the quality of the solder gets overlooked. I mean, I used terrible
yeah,
solder for years because I didn't really know better, and you'd get stuff that would like bunch up or it wouldn't heat, create terrible joints. But now I'm using Kester solder, which is like more expensive, but I mean it's just a dream to work with. There's just never an issue with it. So that's
yeah. I need to replace my solder really badly. I had the same spool because I didn't do a lot of soldering. I soldered pickups. That was the main soldering I did. Occasionally, I would swap some capacitors out in an amp where a capacitor blew, something small. Um, so I bought this one spool of solder in the mid 2000s, big spool, but from Radio Shack, which tells you how long ago it was. Um, and I just ran out of it this year. And so I bought some more solder, and I had not had to buy solder in 15 years.
yeah, it goes
And
a long
so
way.
yeah, that the solder I bought is not the best stuff to work with. I don't enjoy that process. But upgrading my soldering iron was the best decision I've ever made. Even for the little bit of soldering I do, I spent some money on a good iron. Hako, I think.
Heiko, yeah,
Hako. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. There's two A's that always messes me up.
sure.
Um, but yeah, no, it's a incredible iron. It's got the adjustable temperature. You can raise and lower it. It's got a digital readout, so I know what the temperature is. I assume it's accurate. Um, but it made quick work of the stuff I do. Which now that I'm getting my soldering's getting better, I'm thinking about buying kits and learning to build pedals myself. And that's where I think our Discord's really cool. We got several builders in there who just talk about the stuff they're doing, or people who do repair. It's been a lot of fun, and it's kind of inspiring me to try to make stuff.
Yeah, yeah, guitar pedals. Um, there's troubleshooting involved, and the first one probably won't go well. But I
Yeah,
mean, I really don't have an affinity for electronics, and I've gotten to the point where I'm releasing my own work. Um,
yeah,
it really, if you just grind through it and just continue to learn, continue to refine your process, there's no reason why really anybody can't build a guitar pedal. It's a pretty simple electronic circuit at the end of the day for the majority of commercially available pedals. Like just kind of like with guitars, there's a legacy with guitar pedals, like the Proco Rat, um, MXR Distortion Plus. I mean, they're pretty simple. Like you could, if you took
right.
6 months, you could make one easily. You know?
Yeah, and that's it's been one of those things. I've had electrical engineer friends, a couple of them patrons of this show, who I'm like, I've had to sit them down and like, no, explain, because there's been a mental block for me in getting it, and like the way circuits are wired up, like the physical wiring of it up, and looking at how it's done, and like, no, no, no. Yeah, I get what you are explaining, what you think is the simplest version of this. I need you to go down two more steps. Like, go down two more. And actually, I'm starting to understand, and I'm actually feeling pretty good about the idea of building something. But let's talk about that. So you've released a pedal,
Yes,
um,
actually,
and listeners, depending on when this show goes out, or
I
yep, there you go.
think
For YouTube viewers, you can see the screen. It is the I actually have right here as well. This is actually number one. This is actually on loan from you that will be going back to you, because there will be a demo up over on listener. Depending on when this goes out, it may already be up or it may be upcoming. Because we're in the for those of you that are listening to this way later at a recording, we're in the midst of December 2022 holiday season. Schedules are what they are. Um, this podcast could go out the day after we're recording. It could go out a week after. Um, but so you've released this pedal. It is an overdrive, boost, and distortion in one box,
Yes.
with a switch to go between them. I was actually playing with it a bunch before we started recording, um, and I'm really really enjoying it. It's I love the fact that your first pedal you did a 2-band EQ instead of just a 3-knob overdrive. I like having multiple bands of EQ. So let's talk about this. Uh, why start with this pedal?
Uh, well, this pedal was basically a natural progression of what I had learned over time. I basically the first guitar pedal that I made was a one knob MXR micro amp clone, which is like a Queen boost, op amp Queen boost.
Yeah.
Then from there, I think my next pedal, I figured, well, I'll add a volume pot because that's easy. It's basically just three connections. And so then I had volume and gain. Then with op amps, if you add a switch, um, and add two diodes in opposite directions, that basically gives you clipping, or what's known as soft clipping. So it's kind of like an
Okay.
overdriven sound. So on a switch, I had, you know, Queen boost, and then I introduced the diodes, which, you know, so now I have Queen boost, I have overdrive. Then from there, um, I had to think about a EQ section. So I tried a bunch of different styles and eventually landed on this one, which
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of, I hate to use the word transparent when talking about guitar pedals, but that's basically like what I wanted. Basically, you turn the knob to the right, it boosts. You turn to the left, it cuts, and in the middle, it's flat. So
Right.
that's basically what I wanted for this. So that when you turn the pedal on, you can. It's basically you can add as much or as little as you want. Um, so once I had the EQ, I had the gain pot, I had the volume. I thought, well, there's really like four styles of gain pedals, clean boost, overdrive, distortion, and also fuzz. And so I tried to, add a fuzz. It's basically adding two more diodes, this time to ground instead of with the op amp. And figuring out the switching was really difficult, but eventually I got it. And that's kind of how I landed on this. It was, like I said, it was pretty much just a natural progression of what I had learned over time. And I made a lot of mistakes with it, like in the prototype and the designing, but eventually landed on a design that like functions perfectly how I wanted it. And yeah, then from there, like once I had the circuit design, then all of the other considerations came into play, like the enclosure color, the knobs, um, the packaging, everything else that goes along
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
products. But that's kind of how
The
this one
the
developed.
branding.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was when you sent this out to me to try out and do some videos with, I intentionally didn't ask you anything about it. I was like, I don't want to hear, oh, well, it's similar to this pedal or that pedal, or it's got this vibe or that vibe. I was like, no, I don't want to know. Just I'm gonna get it, plug it in. I'm gonna hear it and see what. And it was a really really pleasant surprise because I think I complained on one of these podcasts recently. I have like a ton of drive pedals sitting around, Timmy's and drive a Tim, and like so many of them. And it's gonna get me so much flack. They're derivatives of essentially a tube screamer circuit.
sure.
They move the EQ around. Maybe they move the resonant peak a little bit. Maybe they have a little more gain, a little less gain, a little more bass, a little less bass. Um, and we've all got pedals we love and we hate. I have really started to love much lower gain pedals than I used to, which is something I loved about yours is that it's a I wasn't sure. I didn't know if this would be like a really like hardcore, like really push and really compress kind of thing like a tube screamer. I know if it didn't know if it'd be a little more open, kind of like a I don't know, like a light speed or blues breaker type of thing. And that's where I think it lives. I'm really enjoying it on the lighter gain side of things, really pushing my amp just a little bit on it, similar to the way I use the Greer Lightspeed, which is a pedal that I absolutely adore, way more than any person should love an inanimate object. It's really disgusting. So I like that about this pedal. The distortion is good, but I'll be honest, I'm not a distortion person in general. I'm an overdrive person. I'm that stereotypical. I don't like John Mayer that much. I like John Mayer, but I'm that guy. Everybody knows that guy. Um, so I don't know. I really enjoy that. But the boost setting in the middle, where I plugged that into my Tyler Princeton reverb style amp
Mm-hmm.
and turned it up, and that boost hitting it was just that's exactly what that amp needs. I think we talked about it. My higher wattage amps, I needed to use the overdrive to get sort of that effect that I wanted to get that little bit of compression.
Sure.
But so you got this pedal out now. It's available on your website right now for purchase.
Indeed. Yeah.
I think you were working out a few automation kinks there on the website before we got started, but I'm sure that's all going to be wrapped up before this episode airs. So y'all go over to that website, check it out.
Yeah, that was just a minor thing. It doesn't affect, purchase.
No. It's just technology. It just means on the back end, I think the issue was it's just giving you more work that you have to actually go do it yourself instead of doing something much automatically. Yeah, quality of life thing for people with small businesses. So you started with a drive pedal. Obviously, you're not going to stop there because that's not what people do. I can't think of any company that put out a drive pedal and stopped there, with the exception of, well, no, I take that back. I just named like 3 in my head.
The Klon,
as far as I'm aware,
the
Klon was one that popped
really
in my head. Does Crowther make anything besides the hot cake?
I don't know.
I
know that's
either.
the most famous one, but
yeah, me too. I don't have one. I've never had one. I really need to get one. But so what's next? I mean, I know you've just released this, but it's sort of like putting out an album, right? By the time an artist puts out an album, they're like, "Whew, finally that's done." They've already moved on to the next thing, right? It's only new to the people buying it. It's not new to the artist. It's years old by that point in their head. Yeah. Pedals are kind of the same way. But people release a pedal, they're like, okay, that's out in the wild. I can work on something else now.
Yes. Yeah, with me, the way that I kind of design, I have a lot of things going concurrently. So there are certain things that are further along than others. Like the Winter Storm, for example, took about 2 years from an idea in my head to, now selling it. And I have other pedals along the way. The next pedal that I'm going to be selling is actually this one. This is let me see if I can get it in. It's this is actually a prototype. The graphics are, not done. I'm going to have somebody do that. The circuit is complete. The layout of the PCB is complete, and it's basically a complete departure from the Winter Storm and any other conventional guitar pedal. So I'm really going extreme with this one. Basically what it is I'm calling it the spell book, and it is a self-oscillating distortion and fuzz pedal with 3 different modes. So you can choose 3 different octave ranges. Basically in mode 1, it goes from a low E to a high E. Mode 2, it goes from a low B to a high B. And then in mode 3, it also goes from a low B to a high B, but it's an octave lower than mode 2. You're going to have to listen to it and hear it to understand it, because it's tough to talk about. There's also an EQ section, 2 knobs, basically a bass and treble with it being flat in the middle for one knob, and then for the other knob it's a mids control. Same idea. So I'm hoping to have this done in like the first half of 2023. I basically just need, pretty soon. I just need to contact somebody to do the graphics for me. I have somebody lined up for that. Um, and then I'll probably end up doing Kickstarter for this one, and just all the marketing that goes into this type of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be a very different type of pedal, and it should be interesting.
Yeah, I love octave fuzz. I am so bad at finding places in the styles of music I play to use it, but I
Hmm.
love octave fuzz a whole lot. So that's really rad. I like the fact that you kept sort of at least the controls are the same layout. I
Yeah,
like that consistency in whatever pedal maker this is my OCD. I'm not truly OCD, but this is like the weird minor compulsion I have is that I like to look at a pedal and recognize that style by somebody, and that comes down to the layout controls. Like there's some consistency there. Um, Sort of like when you buy a Chase Bliss pedal, the smaller one, the smaller ones, it's going to be a 6 knob pedal with probably some switches, and then the
right.
dip switches on the back. There's a consistency in their style. Um, I like the idea of multiple bands of EQ in an octave fuzz.
Well,
Um,
actually, I might have said octave fuzz,
oh,
but
yeah, yeah. You,
it's actually self-oscillating. So
oh,
it's like I said, it's not anything conventional. Um,
oh. Well, now I'm
but
even more intrigued.
I'll
I
have to.
definitely won't have a place for it, but
No, no, I don't think so. But I'll have to send you some sound clips because
yeah,
I'm still like figuring out how I like to use this pedal, and I have some good ideas. It's more it's more of like a synth based guitar pedal as opposed to like something more traditional. Although you
okay.
said octave fuzz, I do actually have something which I'm hoping to be my third guitar pedal release, which is an octave fuzz. So
Yeah, there's not enough people making octave fuzzes, and
no,
I've
I love
realized
them.
that. Yeah, I'm sure somebody's listening that they're like, Philip, there are so many octave fuzzes. There's not enough. There can be more. Um, Okay, that was my bad, but yeah, self oscillating. See, now I have no idea. Like you're
Yeah.
outside my idea of what to think that thing sounds like. So I'm definitely going to look forward to the sound clips. Uh, you should maybe post some over in the Discord,
I
and
will.
let folks hear those and just weird people out. I'm I'm
Yeah,
trying
this
to
is
get
a weird
more
one.
into. I'm trying to get more into weird sounds. Like it's back here in one of these boxes. I borrowed the oh, I want to get the company right because I think it's Leon over at Pelican Noise Works. Um, I think he made the Benson pedal, not Benson as in Chris Benson. So don't get that twisted. I'm sorry, not Benson. It's the Benford. So yeah, the 6100. I borrowed it from Scott over at uh, the effects loop. It is the oddest pedal I've ever messed with. It's got 3 modes. One's a hall reverb with a fuzz on the reverb trails. Um, there's another one that's a digital fuzz ring mod tremolo phaser high mid boost, and then another setting that's like a glitchy pitch shifting delay. That's the one I really liked actually. But it's like I love that there are some just oddball pedals out there that you don't know what they do. They're just going to make you think about the instrument a little differently.
Yeah.
Um, that's it's so I'm really excited to hear it and see what you're doing with that.
Yeah. Kind of the reason why I made this. Actually, if you've owned a like a Boss DM2, if you turn all of which is like Boss's delay pedal, analog delay pedal.
Right, right.
I think it's Bucket Brigade, but anyway, if you turn all of the knobs up on that, it starts to self oscillate. Like it starts to
Right.
like compound upon itself. And I found this interesting. Like I did this one day. The problem that I had with it was that it gets insanely loud very quickly. And so it's not exactly usable. So I kind of thought that, I like this, but I was wondering like if I could play my guitar through this. And so I started to look into circuits that would allow me to do that. Like have like an oscillation that I can also like basically brute force my guitar signal through it. And the spell book, it basically, I think this is another pedal where I've had it for like been having the design for about 2 years or longer at this stage, and I finally like got it to work, and it's it's a strange pedal, but it's actually I saw somebody make something like similar, and they released it I think maybe 3 or 6 months ago. It's the
Uh-huh.
Acorn Amps ADHD. That's like the most
Oh.
similar thing that I can kind of say that my pedal is like. You may have seen it. I think William
I've
John
seen one.
Bennett released a demo of this one.
I did have I so I was in Atlanta of a month or so ago, and Acorn is an Atlanta-based company,
Oh, okay.
and they had the ADHD at a couple of the shops I went to, but I had no time to sit and plug it in, and it's one of those things that also I when I go in a music store, I rarely grab ask to plug in pedals. I'm usually just going to grab a guitar, plug into an amp, and play that way. But they had a pedal board set up with a bunch of them, and I wanted to, but just time. I was trying to squeeze everything into this like tiny time window I had. Um, Acorn's making some really cool stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so I'll have to go listen to that as well, and it'll give me an idea of what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
not quite sure how close it is to what I'm doing. I get the
yeah.
impression that it's fairly different, but I also found it interesting because it's kind of like parallel, like our minds were kind of on parallel tracks. Not sure like if it's just like a single person who releases those pedals or if it's a company, but um, it's definitely like an interesting take.
Well, there's that phenomenon that oh, what is I can't remember what it's called. Coincidental occurrence phenomenon. Maybe that's not it, but it's like that it's that event where you realize that multiple people who don't know each other come up with the same idea roughly the same time, and you start to see that happen. I think Josh Scott actually did a Monday talk about this kind of thing. But there's no contact. It's just simultaneous evolution of an idea.
Yeah,
Um, it's a fascinating phenomenon where I'm trying to think of, like, I used to have a really good illustration of this, and now my mind is completely left me. But it's like the invention of the light bulb. Multiple people came up with the idea, we're working on it at the same time, and Edison famously beat someone to the patent office by minutes or whatever. I don't know. I'm not an electrical history historian, but it's that concept. So yeah, I think there is something to that, because I think we see it in guitar pedals all the time. Multiple people release a pedal and they're like, "Oh, these three builders were all sort of thinking the same thing, like at the same time, to put this idea out." And that's just talking big builders. That's not talking, um, the hundreds of smaller builders now. I think somebody guesstimated that there's like over 1,200 pedal companies out there now.
interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't be
That's a
surprised if there's more. I mean,
Yeah,
they
I
pop
wouldn't
up
be
all the
surprised at
time.
all. Yeah, it's wild. It's such a great time to be a guitar player that likes pedals.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, it's such an incredible time. I mean, you're putting out pedals, and then I've had some other great pedal makers on the show, and everything from whatever simplest one knob fuzz you want to play to things like uh the my my favorite scary pedal of this past year that I picked up, the microcosm. I still don't know what this does. I play it. It makes things happen. I still don't know how it happens. I turn knobs and it's fun. Um, but it's such a wonderful world to be wonderful time to be in guitar and to get into pedals. So the other thing that I've seen pictures of, you posted some pictures of amp building. Is that something you think you're going to do later, or is that just something you do for fun?
That one was. basically just for fun and just to do it. I've considered, making a product along those lines, but I think probably leave it to others for now. Maybe someday, I don't anticipate like me becoming an amp builder for a few different reasons. Um, it's I appreciate amplifiers, but it's not really like I didn't really get into this whole thing to be an amp builder. Also, as far as the market is concerned, I think
Yeah.
that amps are becoming less and less prevalent among a lot of players, and I'm not really sure of the viability of it long term. But
Yeah.
not that that would stop me because I'm, you know, like
Yeah, you do what you want,
yeah,
kind of thing. But I definitely think that is something we're getting into, and that's something I want to like. I want to just disagree with so bad, like because I love amplifiers. I'm an amp guy. I like amps more than I like guitars, more than I like pedals. I just love amps, and yeah, the market is shifting there, and seeing less and less demand for guitar amplifiers. Um, I was just on, and I think by the time this airs, it will have aired. I hope. Um, was on the Guitar Nerds podcast. I was part of their guitar gear of the year, and the list of amplifiers that were released in 2022 was small.
yeah,
It was yeah, it was. We were hunting for more. We were trying to find more to put in there, and it was more than in 20 and 21. I'll say that, but it's still a small list. And I just think that that world has shifted. Um, and I just don't know. I don't know how it's going to look here in the next 15, 20 years. Now, by then, I hope I'll probably be retired and I'm going to be done doing this, and I'll be chilling out playing my now vintage guitars that I bought in 2021. Um, that
but yeah.
I don't know.
Also with
The boomer in me wants amps to always be around just because it's my favorite thing.
yeah, I mean, I certainly appreciate nice amplifiers, but I think the market shifting also with you can just plug your guitar into an audio interface and play virtual amps, and also a lot of amps being sold, like probably that list that you were talking about. As far as the amplifiers are concerned, there's probably a lot of modeling, a lot of digital amps, that type of thing, and
Yeah, there were quite a few.
yeah, which it's fine. Like I guess I'm more traditional in my guitar playing, um, because I appreciate like a tube amp, and I found that like when I learned or when I was kind of learning guitar, I had a Line 6 Flex Tone 3, which was like a modeling amp, better than a Spider, but I found that like it had a lot of good sounds, but out of the 24 amplifiers that I could have been playing, I really only ended up playing like two or three, and so it didn't
Yeah,
really make sense to have all of these amps, and you know if I'm only going to use a couple. So
yeah,
that's kind of
that's
my
that.
feeling on modeling
That's
amps.
my thing about amps in general. Is like I've got a bunch of amps sitting around the house now, and they just keep multiplying. And I still tend to play one or two of them around the house, and it's like I have that internal struggle of why do I keep so many amplifiers when I know the sound I like the most? I basically keep them around for that one day every 6 months where I'm like, I really want to play this sound for, and so I sink money into having that around for that one time every 6 months. And, I played Helix. I was a Helix player for a while. They sound good. I've played the Quad Cortex. They sound good. Talking about plugging into an interface, the neural uh, DSP simulations sound great. I've heard nothing but amazing things of the Mixwave Benson amp suite that they've got. I definitely think we're in a weird world when it comes to amplifiers and where they're going to sit in the market here in even the next 5 years may look a whole lot different.
Sure.
It's not it doesn't have to be the 20-year mark that I was throwing out originally. It's, here in the next 3-5 years, it's going to look completely different. And I think Fender did a really good job of jumping on it with their Tone Master series, where they're like, okay, we're gonna get into this where we can do these kinds of digital amps, but we're gonna make them like we're gonna try to appeal to those people that still want a traditional aesthetic of an amplifier, because I keep seeing pictures of ampless stages and they just look wrong to me.
Yeah, they
I
they
just
look kind of weird. Like I've been to like metal shows where they were using like a Helix, or what's it called, a Kemper,
a
and
Kemper, yeah.
like I'm standing right next to the stage, and there's not a lot of air moving, and it's just like, this is kind of weird. Like, this is, it feels wrong. Like there needs
Yeah.
to be some volume being pushed.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right. Yet I can remember when I like '03, I was in school at MTSU and I went to see the Spin Doctors were playing at the Murphy basketball arena. They're on campus at MTSU, and I'm down front, and the guitar player for the Spin Doctors is playing through two 50-watt Marshalls into 412s, and all I heard all night was guitar.
Right.
I could not hear bass, could not hear the vocalist. There was definitely a snare drum. I do remember us hearing a snare drum, and guitar. Just and so I get it. I understand the appeal of being able to have that much control over the sound out front and the stage volume. But as a musician, I just the person I am, I prefer to have that stage volume in the sound. I hate in-ear monitors. I use them for gigs that need them, and I hate them. I I don't know. I'm gonna have to let go, but I'm gonna keep being the old man screaming at clouds about this. That I'm just gonna continue to be it. Actually, I think I just turned 42 really recently, and I think I'm old enough now to just not care and be crotchety about it. No one told me at what age I get to be a crotchety old man who is stuck in his way, so I'm picking 42.
Okay.
Um, that's just gonna be me. Um, but I don't know. I've deviated far off topic at this point, but so as we're getting really close to the end of the regular episode, listeners, if you enjoy this conversation or any of the other conversations on 40 Watt Podcast, you can go over to Patreon, you can subscribe, and you will get extra episodes for only $5 a month. You'll get an extra episode every show that comes out. Already lining up guests for next year. Next year it's going to be a great season. I'm really excited about some of the guests I've got coming on. I've got some really a couple of like hardcore guitar heroes coming up on that next season. So y'all be sure to tune into that. I'm gonna ask you though, before we leave, I'm gonna leave some practical advice. I'm gonna go lean into your guitar repair work.
Okay.
So let's say the average person wants to get into guitar repair. They want to start working on their own guitars. Now they've got, the normal stuff. They've got a soldering iron, they've got, screwdrivers, they've got, let's say they want to dive deeper than, being able to swap their pickups or do the setup on their guitar. What are 3 tools? Say they want to start looking at, this is where I am. So I'm actually asking for me. I'm the friend. They want to get into, things like crowning frets and leveling frets and maybe into possibly refretting. What are the first 3 most important tools they should be looking at getting? Because I'm really curious about this.
Um, that's it's a bit of a tough question because there's a lot of tools that you need to do it properly. Um,
Right.
I would say as far as stuff that you don't want to cheap out on, get a good pair of like thread cutting pliers. Um,
Okay.
like spend like $50. I know that, like, I'll say it. The StuMac pair is not good. The one that
Really?
they sell is not good. As much as I love StuMac, um, the particular pair that I'm thinking of, I would say avoid and get something like $50. Um,
Okay.
because that can be used to clip the fret ends once you install the frets. Um, Basically, get it close to flush with the end of the board. You can also pull frets if you need to. So I would say that those are valuable to have. Those are like worth the investment. You don't want to cheap out on that. Let me think. Other parts of fretwork. Um, One thing that I consider essential at this stage for me, and this is like it's expensive. It's like $700 or so. But like I couldn't do this without it. It's the early wine neck jig, which Stuart McDonald sells. Um,
Oh yeah.
I would, if you're really serious about this type of thing, I would definitely look into getting that. Now there's a learning curve with it. Like there's a huge learning curve with fretwork in general. Um, but if you're somebody who like really wants to do this and do this as best as they possibly can, um, I would I would tell you to really consider getting something like that because it just makes things so much easier. Like you strap the guitar in, it's not moving around. It's it just makes working on it like as easy as possible. Um,
Yeah.
I, but that's an expensive tool. Um,
Yeah, this is for someone who's really serious about getting into it and probably not just working on their own guitars, but looking to work on other guitars.
um, Let me think. Another couple smaller tools. Um, Good files. Good files are really important. Um, for a long time, I used like just what you would pick up at the hardware store and like try and
Yeah.
modify them and just don't cheap out on files because they're really going to save you a lot of time and frustration. Um, Also, like
Yeah, I actually learned that the hard way really recently. I had a guitar that I needed to widen a fret slot on, and I have, some plain old hardware store files that I've sort of made work or modified, and um I ended up having to rebuild that slot because I was just trying to widen it and I definitely managed to cut depth when I didn't want to. And so I had to do the whole thing with using bone shavings and Loctite and rebuild that slot and recut it. And yeah, I need to spend money on some good fret files and just like or good nut files. Have good files.
yeah, files in general, whether they're nut files or files for crowning or
Hmm.
just I would say don't cheap out on those. Um, I would also say um, like sanding beams, aluminum sanding beams. I use them all the time, not only for fretwork but for just things in general. Um,
Okay.
you can find those. I think Philadelphia Luthier Supply has them. Stuart McDonald sells them. It's a fairly expensive. It's maybe $100 to $200. You get three of them. I think you can buy them piecemeal, but it's good to have all three. I'm restoring a Tysco guitar, and I was resurfacing the fretboard, and I used all three of them last night. And so,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, I would say really look into those because you know they're they're just a really useful tool for doing fret work for resurfacing fretboards. Um, Pretty much every time I do fret work, I use those. And also self-adhesive sandpaper is another one. They go hand in hand
Yes,
with those.
that's one I've got to get because I am fighting. I've had just a block, the blocks that have like the nail points on each end, and you pull the sandpaper over it, and it kind of holds on. I'm so tired of fighting that thing to keep sandpaper on it. It's and then inevitably it's not as tight on there as I want it to be, so it's a little loose. So when I'm sanding, there's some give to it that makes it a little less predictable. And when you're sanding, and I don't know, it's definitely one of those things that has deterred me from working on projects before because I'm like, I don't want to mess with that thing.
Right, right.
So Yeah, self-adhesive sandpaper. Can 100% agree there. Got to get that. Awesome. Well, that's a good starting point, especially I looking at pictures of that neck jig now. I did not, I'll be honest, I didn't know that thing existed.
I would say it's like there are like very good luthiers who don't have one and get
Sure.
great results. I've just found personally that it's worth every penny for me
Yeah,
and what I
I'm
do.
gonna watch their video on how to use it after this podcast, after we finish this recording, and because I'm really curious about how that works.
Yeah, it's another thing. Like it's another learning curve in and of itself, but I found it to be tremendously useful. So
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, David, thank you for coming on the show. Hopefully, folks are going to go over, click the links below that are down in the description of this episode, either on YouTube or in your favorite podcast player. Go find David Ross Musical Instruments on the web, on Instagram. Make sure to go check out demos of the Winter Storm. My demo should be up by now. If it's not, come yell at me. Also, some demos. I'll link William's demo and a couple of others. Go check those out. There'll be a link, obviously, down below where you can go buy it if you are so inclined. And obviously, David, you're in the New York area. If somebody wants to get some guitar repair done, I'm sure they can contact you through that link as well.
yeah,
That
definitely.
works.
Just email me, find me on social media. Yeah, I'm in Binghamton, New York, Broome County, upstate New York. So
Awesome.
if you're in the area, give me a shout.
Awesome. Well, listeners, thank you for coming to listen to another episode of the 40 Watt Podcast. I'm really excited. This is going to be the last episode for 2022. Hope you all have a wonderful holiday, whichever version of the holiday season you celebrate, and have a wonderful new year. We're going to see you in season 3 starting in 2023. Super excited. Third year. I did getting into the third year of this podcast, did not think I'd make it this far, to be honest. I figured I'd do a few episodes and then life would get too busy for me to even consider doing it. But here we are, still going. I appreciate all of your support. And speaking of support, I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters. Y'all are the real rock stars that make this show happen. And so I'm going to thank personally Alan Gresham, our newest Patreon supporter at the $5 level. Also, we've got Andy Koning, Giacomo Ride, Jeffrey Walks, Jim Burns, Kyle Harris, Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Scott Hamilton of the Effects Loop, and Tom Kelly. Also at the $10 level, we got Ben Fair, Dan Pilver from Lewitt Microphones, and Heath Batt. Thank you all for all of your support, helping make this show continue to happen. Your support is so greatly appreciated. And until next time, until season 3, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.